I watched from my penthouse window as my mother's car pulled into the driveway of my old childhood home 20 floors below. My phone buzzed, a message in the family group chat I hadn't left yet, though I rarely checked it. Your sister needs your old desk for her master's program. We're coming to get it tomorrow. You don't need it anymore anyway. I smiled, setting down my coffee on the imported Italian marble countertop of my home office. The desk they were talking about, that battered IKEA thing I'd studied at for years, was already gone. I'd donated it to a women's shelter 3 months ago, the same week I'd furnished this entire floor with custom-made furniture from a Danish designer. The irony was delicious. My phone buzzed again. My sister Melody, in a separate chat, finally getting what I deserve. Mom says your apartment is tiny anyway. You don't have room for it. They had no idea I'd moved. No idea that the tiny studio they thought I was still scraping by in had been vacated 8 months ago. No idea about any of it. But I knew. I knew everything because I'd lived this all before. The memory of my death was still vivid, even 2 years after I'd opened my eyes on my 21st birthday and realized I'd been given a second chance. In my first life, I died at 33, alone in a hospital bed, my body ravaged by stress-induced illness. I'd worked myself to death trying to prove my worth to a family that never valued me, while Melody coasted on my achievements and my parents' favoritism. This time would be different. This time, I'd let them think they'd won. The first life had been a slow, painful lesson in how little I mattered to my own family. I was born 2 years before Melody, but from the moment she arrived, I became invisible. My parents, particularly my mother, had always wanted a delicate, feminine daughter, someone who loved shopping and makeup and playing the piano. Instead, they got me. Tomboyish, bookish, more interested in coding than clothes. Then Melody was born, and she was everything they'd wanted. Beautiful, charming, naturally gifted at all the social graces I'd never mastered. By the time she was 5 and I was 7, the dynamic was set. Melody was the princess. I was the workhorse. It started small. Melody got the bigger bedroom because she needed space for her dancing. I got the cramped room that barely fit a twin bed and the desk I'd begged for so I could do my homework somewhere other than the kitchen table. When Melody wanted piano lessons, they cost too much for both of us, so my art classes were canceled. When Melody needed a new laptop for high school, they gave her mine, the one I'd saved up for with 2 years of babysitting money, and told me I could use the family desktop in the living room. "You're the older sister," my father would say, in that tone that made it sound like a privilege rather than a curse. "You need to set an example. Be generous." Generous, that was the word they used to dress up the theft of my childhood. In my first life, I'd believed them. I'd internalized the message that my needs were less important, that my role was to sacrifice for Melody's happiness. When I got into a prestigious university on a full scholarship, something I'd achieved entirely through my own merit, my parents had barely reacted. 2 years later, when Melody got into a mediocre state school with average grades, they'd thrown her a party and bought her a car. I'd paid my own way through university, working 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Melody had flunked out after 2 years, moved back home, and lived rent-free while I struggled in a studio apartment with 4 roommates. The pattern continued after graduation. I landed a good job at a tech startup. My parents asked me to help pay for Melody's influencer career. Thousands of dollars for photography equipment, professional makeup, a new wardrobe. When I'd hesitated, my mother had cried and my father had called me selfish. So I'd paid and paid and paid. When I got promoted to senior developer, my parents threw Melody an elaborate 30th birthday party on my credit card. When my startup went public and my stock options made me wealthy, they'd convinced me to invest in Melody's business venture, a boutique that failed within 6 months, taking my $200,000 with it. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the credit. Every success I achieved, Melody somehow claimed a piece of. When I won an award for my coding work, Melody posted on social media about how she'd inspired her sister's creativity with her artistic eye. When I was featured in a tech magazine, my parents told everyone that Melody's emotional support had been crucial to my success. And I'd let them, because I'd been so desperate for my family's approval that I'd convinced myself their lies were a form of love. The end came when I was 31 in my first life. I'd been working on a revolutionary app, something that would have changed the trajectory of my career and made me truly independent. I'd made the mistake of telling my family about it during a dinner I'd hosted at my apartment. 3 months later, Melody launched the same app. She'd stolen my code, my designs, my entire concept. She'd hired a developer using money my parents had borrowed from me and presented it as her own creation. When I confronted them, my mother had looked at me with genuine confusion. "But Melody needs this more than you do," she'd said. "You already have a good job. This could finally make her successful." I'd sued. I'd had no choice. The case had dragged on for 2 years, draining my savings and my health. My family had cut me off completely, painting me as a jealous sister trying to sabotage Melody's breakthrough. I'd won the lawsuit eventually. The court had ruled in my favor, awarding me damages. But by then, the stress had destroyed my immune system. I'd developed an aggressive autoimmune disease that the doctors said was triggered by prolonged psychological trauma. I died alone 18 months after the verdict, with my estranged family fighting over my estate before my body was even cold. The last thing I'd seen was Melody's Instagram post, a photo of her in designer clothes, caption reading, "Sometimes people leave our lives so we can finally thrive. Hatch new beginnings, yash blessed life." Then I'd opened my eyes in my childhood bedroom, in my 21-year-old body, with tears streaming down my face and a second chance burning in my chest. The rebirth had been disorienting at first. I'd spent the first week in a daze trying to process the impossible. But the memories of my previous life were too vivid, too detailed to be dreams. I knew things that hadn't happened yet. I remembered conversations that wouldn't take place for years. I knew exactly how my family would betray me if I let them. So, I wouldn't let them. The first thing I did was change my trajectory. In my original timeline, I'd spent my 20s being the good daughter, funneling money and support to my family while neglecting my own growth. This time, I'd be smarter. I was 21, about to graduate university with my computer science degree. In my first life, I'd turned down a job offer from a major tech company in Silicon Valley because my mother had cried and said she needed me closer to home. This time, I accepted immediately. My mother cried again. "But Melody just dropped out of college. She needs your support right now. You can't just abandon your family." I'd looked at her with my second life eyes, seeing clearly what I'd been blind to before. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm building my career. Melody is 23. She can figure out her own life. My father had tried the guilt trip next. "After everything we've done for you, you mean after I paid for my own education with scholarships and part-time jobs?" I'd interrupted, my voice calm. "After I bought my own laptop because you gave mine to Melody? After I moved out at 18 because my bedroom was needed for Melody's walk-in closet?" The silence had been deafening. I'd moved to California and never looked back. Well, not completely. I'd kept minimal contact, occasional texts, calls on holidays. Enough that they still thought of me as the family bank account they could access when needed. But I'd stopped explaining my life to them. Stopped seeking their approval, stopped mentioning my successes. When I'd made my first million at 24 from my stock options, I didn't tell them. When I was promoted to lead developer at 26, they never knew. When I left that job to start my own company at 28, I let them believe I was still just a regular programmer scraping by. Meanwhile, I'd been watching, learning, preparing. I knew exactly when Melody would ask to borrow money for her boutique, except this time when she asked, I said I was broke and struggling. I knew when my parents would try to convince me to co-sign a loan for them, I was mysteriously denied due to my credit score. I knew every manipulation, every guilt trip, every attempt to drain my resources. And I dodged them all. Instead, I'd built an empire they knew nothing about. My company, Athena Technologies, had started as a small app development firm, using my knowledge from my first life about which trends would explode and which would fail. I'd positioned us perfectly. We'd grown exponentially, and by the time I was 30, my current age, we'd been acquired by a major corporation for $200 million. My personal take had been $70 million. I'd immediately diversified, investing in real estate, starting new ventures, building a portfolio that would sustain me for life. I'd bought this penthouse in a luxury building in my hometown. Yes, I'd moved back, though my family didn't know, and filled it with everything I'd ever wanted. The home office I'd furnished wasn't just an office. It was a shrine to everything I'd achieved without them. Custom-built bookshelves held my collection of first editions and tech manuals. My desk, handcrafted from reclaimed wood by a master carpenter, had cost more than my parents' car. The ergonomic chair was worth $5,000. The view overlooked the entire city, including the middle-class neighborhood where my family still lived, completely unaware that I was thriving just miles away. I'd also started quietly helping people my family had wronged. The small business owner my father had scammed in my first life, I'd invested in his company, and now it was thriving. The young woman Melody had bullied in high school, I'd given her a job at my company, and she was now one of my best developers. The scholarship fund at my university that my parents had once tried to pressure me into rating for Melody, I'd endowed it with $5 million. Good deeds done in complete anonymity. Justice served cold and quiet, but I'd been patient. I'd been waiting for the right moment to let my family see exactly what they'd lost by underestimating me. That moment was coming. I could feel it. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning. My mother called, an actual phone call, not just a text. That meant they wanted something big. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I was literally in the middle of a board meeting for one of my portfolio companies, but I muted my N and stepped out. "What do you need, Mom?" "It's Melody. She's been accepted into a master's program in business administration. It's very prestigious." I knew this program. In my first life, Melody had attended and dropped out after one semester, but not before racking up $70,000 in student loans that my parents had convinced me to co-sign. I'd been paying them off when I died. "That's great," I said neutrally. "The thing is, the program is very demanding. She needs to really focus on her studies. So we were thinking she should move into your old apartment. You know, the studio you have? It's closer to the university." I blinked. My studio was actually a property I'd kept for tax purposes. I hadn't lived there in 5 years, but my family didn't know that. "My apartment?" "Well, you're barely there anyway with your work, right? And Melody really needs it. Plus, she needs furniture. We were going to get your old desk from storage." "I don't have it anymore," I said truthfully. "What? What happened to it?" "I donated it 3 months ago." The silence on the other end was gratifying. Then, "You donated it?" That was a family heirloom. It absolutely was not. It was a cheap desk from IKEA that I'd bought with my babysitting money when I was 16. "I didn't need it anymore," I said simply. "I have new furniture now." "Well," my mother's voice had gone cold. I suppose it doesn't matter. Melody can buy a new desk." "But about the apartment?" "No." "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated. "Melody can't have my apartment." "Don't be selfish. You have a good job. You can afford to help your sister." I said no. My voice was ice. "If Melody wants an apartment, she can get her own. I'm not giving her mine." "After everything we've done for you, Mom, I have to go. I'm at work." I hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts. From my mother, from my father, from Melody herself. All variations on the same theme. I was selfish, ungrateful, a terrible daughter and sister. I blocked them all and went back to my meeting. That evening, I made a decision. It was time to stop hiding. Time to stop letting them think I was the struggling programmer barely making rent. Time to show them exactly what I'd become while they'd been focused on Melody. But I'd do it my way. Strategic, calculated, devastating. I'd let them think they'd won one last time. Then I'd pull the rug out from under them so completely they'd never recover. The plan came together over the next few days. First, I had my assistant, a brilliant woman named Sarah who I trusted completely, reach out to my family using a burner email. The message was simple. She was a friend of mine who'd heard they needed furniture for Melody. She had a storage unit full of old furniture she was getting rid of, including a desk, and she'd be happy to give it to them for free. My mother responded within an hour. The desk Sarah delivered wasn't just any desk. It was a gorgeous piece. Solid wood, beautiful craftsmanship, worth about $3,000. I'd bought it specifically for this purpose, but it had a secret. Built into one of the drawers was a recording device, not quite a bug, more like a very sophisticated voice-activated camera. Completely legal in our state's one-party consent jurisdiction, especially since the desk was technically still my property, just on loan. I wanted to know what my family said about me when they thought I couldn't hear. The footage was illuminating. Can you believe she wouldn't give Melody her apartment? My mother's voice bitter and sharp. After everything we've done for her, we raised her, fed her, gave her a home. She always was selfish, my father agreed. Never wanted to help her sister, too focused on herself. At least she's not successful enough to be really arrogant about it, Melody chimed in. I watched through the camera as she sat at the desk I'd provided, examining her manicure. I mean, she's what, 30? Still just a programmer? Making what, maybe $80,000 a year? Meanwhile, I'm about to get my MBA and really make something of myself. You're so much more ambitious than she ever was, my mother cooed. I watched this footage with a glass of wine in my hand, in my $70 million penthouse, and laughed until I cried. They had no idea. None. Phase 2 of my plan involved my parents' own greed. I had Sarah reach out again, this time with a business opportunity. A wealthy investor was looking to fund small businesses in the area and had heard about my father's consulting business, a legitimate company he ran that was perpetually on the edge of bankruptcy due to his poor management. The investor, a shell company I'd set up, was willing to offer a significant investment, $500,000. All my father had to do was pitch his business plan. He jumped at it. The meeting was set up at a downtown hotel in one of their business suites. My father arrived in his best suit, my mother by his side for support, both of them practically salivating at the prospect of easy money. The investor they met was actually my lawyer, David Chen, a man they'd never met and who was under strict instructions to be as professional and legitimate as possible. "Mr. Morrison," David said, shaking my father's hand, "thank you for coming. I've heard interesting things about your business." For an hour, David grilled my father on his business plan. It was clear within 10 minutes that my father had no real strategy, no understanding of market dynamics, no realistic projections. His plan was essentially get money, hope things work out. "I see," David said finally. "Mr. Morrison, I appreciate your time, but I don't think this is the right fit for our investment portfolio." My father's face fell. "Wait, but you said $500,000? I said we were prepared to invest up to that amount in the right business. Yours, unfortunately, isn't it? You have no concrete plan, no understanding of your market, and frankly, your financial records show a pattern of poor decision-making." "Now wait just a minute." "However," David continued smoothly, "I do have a counteroffer. We're always looking for businesses to acquire. I'd be willing to purchase your consulting firm for, let's say, $200,000. You'd stay on as an employee for a transition period, then you'd be free to retire or pursue other ventures." $200,000. To my parents, that was a fortune. I watched through the video feed. Yes, I had the whole meeting recorded as they exchanged glances. "We'll need to think about it," my mother said. "Of course, you have 1 week." They took 3 days. The paperwork was signed, the money transferred. My shell company now owned my father's business. He didn't know that Chen Investment Partners was just another piece of my portfolio, that the man offering him an employee transition period was actually my lawyer, that I now owned the company he'd built. Phase 3 was Melody. Her MBA program had started and she was already struggling. I knew she would. She'd never been academically inclined, and business school required actual work. In my first life, she'd cheated her way through, paying other students to write her papers and do her assignments. This time, I'd made sure that wouldn't be an option. Through a series of anonymous tips to the university's academic integrity office, backed up with actual evidence from my first life's timeline that miraculously still applied, I'd flagged several students known for selling assignment services. The university had cracked down hard, expelling 3 students and putting the entire program on high alert for cheating. Melody was on her own. I watched through my desk camera as she struggled, night after night. Watched her call our mother, crying about how hard the work was, how she didn't understand the material, how she was going to fail. "Just do your best, sweetheart," my mother would coo. "You're so smart, you can do this." But she couldn't, and deep down, they all knew it. The final phase, the grand reveal, was approaching. I'd set it in motion weeks ago, and all the pieces were falling into place. My family thought I was a struggling programmer. They had no idea about my success, my wealth, my empire. They'd underestimated me so profoundly that they couldn't conceive of a world where I'd surpass them. It was time to shatter that illusion. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, a gala for the city's most successful young entrepreneurs hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. It was a big deal: black tie, media coverage, speeches from local politicians. I was being honored as Innovator of the Year for my work in tech and my philanthropic investments in the community. The invitation list was public. My parents would see my name on it. They'd wonder why I was attending such a prestigious event. They might even think I was going as someone's plus one. I made sure they knew I'd be there. I sent a casual text to the family group chat, the first message I'd sent in months. "Hey, been busy with work. Anyone else going to the Chamber of Commerce gala next week?" "My company got tickets." The response was immediate. "Melody, you're going to that? How did you get tickets? Those are like $500 each." My mother: "Your company must have bought a table. That's nice of them to include you." I didn't correct them. The week before the gala, I did something I hadn't done in 9 years. I invited my family to lunch. They were surprised, but delighted. "Maybe she's finally coming around," I heard my mother whisper to my father on the desk camera. We met at a nice restaurant, nothing too fancy, but upscale enough to make a statement. I arrived first, dressed casually but expensively. They arrived together, my parents, Melody, even my grandmother, who I'd barely spoken to in years. "It's so good to see you, sweetheart," my mother said, kissing my cheek. "You look well. Have you gained weight? You look healthy." It was a backhanded compliment, her way of saying I looked better than the gaunt, stressed version of myself they remembered. I smiled and let it slide. Over lunch, I listened to them talk. Melody complained about her classes. My father mentioned he'd sold his business but was enjoying the employee transition period. My mother talked about their vacation plans. Apparently, they were thinking of taking a trip to Europe with Melody's graduation money. Melody was already planning to fail, I realized. She'd convinced our parents that she'd graduate, but I knew she wouldn't make it past this semester. "So," my father said finally, turning to me, "how's work? Still programming?" "It's going well," I said vaguely. "I've been promoted a few times, working on some interesting projects." "That's nice." He sounded completely disinterested. "What are you making now, about 90,000? 6 figures yet?" I smiled. "Something like that." "Well, every bit helps. Especially if you're planning to help Melody with her student loans. Those MBA programs are expensive." There it was, the real reason for their enthusiasm about lunch. "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I wanted to talk to you all about something. A proposition." They leaned in, eager. "I've been doing some investing recently. Real estate mostly, small businesses. I have an opportunity coming up, a chance to invest in a commercial property downtown. High-rise building, great location. But I need to decide quickly, and I wanted to know if you'd be interested in going in on it together." My father's eyes gleamed. "How much of an investment?" "For a fifth share, about 200,000. My mother gasped. That's everything we got from selling your father's business." "I know, but this property is a guaranteed return. In 5 years, your investment would triple." "At least." I watched them calculate, watched greed war with caution. "Let me think about it," my father said. "Of course, take your time. I need to know by next week, though. The gala, actually. I'll need your answer by then." They agreed, and we parted ways. I knew what they'd decide. I'd seen this play out before in my first life with different numbers and different stakes. They'd invest. They'd see it as a chance to finally profit off me, the daughter they'd overlooked. They had no idea they were about to lose everything. The night of the gala arrived. I spent hours getting ready. My dress was custom-made, a stunning floor-length gown in deep emerald that had cost more than my family's annual grocery budget. My jewelry was real, diamonds and platinum, pieces I'd collected over the years. My hair and makeup were done by professionals. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like old money, like success, like power. I arrived at the gala in a car service, not a limo, too ostentatious, but a sleek black Mercedes with a driver. The venue was the city's most prestigious hotel, the ballroom glittering with chandeliers and filled with the most influential people in the region. I checked in, received my honorary badge, and made my way inside. My family was already there. I spotted them immediately, overdressed in a try-hard way, clustered near the bar, looking overwhelmed by the opulence around them. Melody was in a dress that was slightly too tight, too shiny. My mother wore too much jewelry. My father kept tugging at his collar. They saw me and waved. I made my way over. "Oh, there you are," my mother said. "We were wondering which table your company bought. We're at table 47, way in the back. Where are you sitting?" I smiled. "I'll show you." I led them through the ballroom, past table after table of well-dressed guests, past the media area where photographers were set up, past the stage where speakers would present, to table 1, front and center, the table reserved for the evening's honorees and their guests. My mother frowned. "Is this where your boss is sitting? Are you introducing us?" "No," I said simply. This is where I'm sitting. These are my seats." I gestured to the place cards. Each one read, "Guest of Iris Morrison, Innovator of the Year." The silence was deafening. "What?" Melody said finally. "That can't be right. You're not the honoree. That's for business owners and entrepreneurs and me," I finished. "I am a business owner. I have been for years." My father's face had gone pale. "What are you talking about? You're a programmer. You work for some tech company." "I own a tech company," I corrected. "Several, actually. I started Athena Technologies 8 years ago. We were acquired 2 years ago for $200 million. My personal stake was $70 million. I watched my words sink in, watched their faces cycle through disbelief, shock, confusion, and finally, dawning horror. "That's impossible," my mother whispered. "You would have told us why. So you could ask for money? So Melody could claim she'd inspired me? So you could take credit for my success?" I shook my head. "No, I built this without you, without any of you." $70 million? My father's voice was strangled. "You have $70 million? Had. I've invested most of it. My current net worth is approximately $90 million, give or take a few million depending on market conditions." Melody made a sound like a wounded animal. "But you said you told me you were broke. When I asked for money for my boutique—" "I lied," I said simply. "I've been lying for years because I knew exactly what you'd do if you knew the truth. You'd bleed me dry. You'd claim pieces of everything I built. You'd make it about yourselves." "We're your family," my mother hissed. "You're my relatives," I corrected. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. Family doesn't play favorites and demand sacrifices and steal opportunities. Family doesn't take and take and take until there's nothing left." "This is insane," Melody said, her voice shrill. You can't just cut us out." "I already did, years ago. You just didn't notice because you were too busy underestimating me." The lights dimmed. A voice came over the speakers announcing the start of the program. "Enjoy the evening," I said sweetly. "Oh, and about that investment opportunity?" "I was lying about that too. There is no property. I just wanted to see if you'd try to take everything you'd gotten from selling Dad's business. The business I now own, by the way. Chen Investment Partners? That's mine. You sold your company to me." My father staggered. "What?" "I own your company. I own your debt. In fact, I've been quietly buying up all of your debts for the past year. The mortgage on your house? I hold it. Your car loans, mine. Melody's student loans? I convinced her lender to sell them to me. I own everything." "Why?" my mother breathed. "Why would you do this?" "Control," I said simply. "I wanted you to understand what it feels like to have someone else hold power over your entire life. The way you held power over mine for 21 years. "You can't do this," Melody said, tears streaming down her face. "You can't just—" This is revenge. This is cruel. No, I said, my voice hard. Cruel is giving your older daughter's belongings to her sister because you can't be bothered to treat them equally. Cruel is stealing someone's app idea and claiming it as your own. Cruel is letting your child work 3 jobs to put herself through college while you throw parties for the one who flunked out. Cruel is what you did to me, every day, for my entire childhood. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Melody, I know about the plagiarism. The paper you submitted last week for your strategic management class? I made sure to send your professor a detailed comparison with the original source. They'll be contacting you about academic dishonesty soon. You might want to start packing your dorm. I left them standing there, shell-shocked and speechless, and took my seat at table 1. The gala was magnificent. I gave a speech about innovation and perseverance and the importance of believing in yourself even when others don't. I accepted my award to thunderous applause. I shook hands with the mayor, the city council, the heads of every major corporation in the region. And through it all, I was aware of my family at their table in the back, watching my triumph with horror and disbelief. After my speech, people swarmed me. Congratulations, requests for my card, invitations to future events. I was gracious and professional, accepting praise with humble thanks. I didn't look back at table 47. The aftermath was even more satisfying than I'd imagined. Melody was expelled from her MBA program 3 days later. The plagiarism was just the tip of the iceberg. Once they started investigating, they found multiple instances of academic dishonesty. Her student loans, which I now owned, immediately came due. She had no way to pay them. My father's business, now under my ownership, underwent a restructuring. I brought in competent management, streamlined operations, and actually made it profitable. My father's transition period ended with a generous severance package. Generous because I wasn't cruel, just fair, and a strict non-compete agreement. My mother tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer, threatened to sue me for emotional damages and elder abuse. The lawyer took one look at her case, realized who I was and what resources I had, and quietly suggested she drop it. The mortgage on their house, the house I now held, came with terms. They could continue living there, paying monthly as they always had. But the moment they missed a payment, I'd foreclose. It was motivation for my father to find new employment, which he did. A middle management position at a firm that paid half what he was used to. Melody moved back home. She had no degree, no job prospects, no skills beyond looking pretty on Instagram. She got a job at a department store, selling the kind of designer clothes she used to buy without thinking. I didn't gloat, I didn't rub it in, I simply existed successfully, visibly. I made sure my success was public knowledge, not in a flashy way. I wasn't posting on social media or doing press tours, but my name appeared in business journals. My investments were reported in the local news, my philanthropic work was recognized, and my family had to watch, had to see their neighbors congratulate them on having such a successful daughter, had to smile and nod when people asked them about my achievements, had to live with the knowledge that they'd had a chance to be part of my success, and they'd squandered it by treating me as less than. 3 months after the gala, my mother called. Not to yell or accuse, she was past that. To apologize. I didn't see you, she said, her voice small. I didn't see who you were. What you were capable of. I only saw what I wanted you to be. I know, I said. Can we start over? Can you forgive us? I thought about it, really thought about it. In my first life, I died wanting their approval, wanting their love, wanting them to see me. In this life, I'd already gotten everything I needed. I'd proven myself. I'd succeeded. I'd built an empire and a life that had nothing to do with them. Did I need their apology? Did I need their relationship? No, I said finally. I don't think I can forgive you, not really. What you did to me, it wasn't just neglect. It was systematic, purposeful degradation. You made me feel worthless because it was convenient for you. Because it made Melody feel special. Because it was easier than treating your daughters equally. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you are. You're sorry you lost access to my money. Sorry you didn't know about my success sooner. Sorry you can't claim credit for who I became. But are you sorry for how you treated me? for the 21 years of making me feel like I was worth less than my sister? I don't think you are. I don't think you're capable of that kind of reflection. Silence. But, I continued, I'm not cruel. I won't make you homeless. I won't destroy you financially. I'll hold your mortgage and your debts, but I won't call them due unless you give me reason. You can live your lives. You can rebuild, but you'll do it knowing that your safety net is woven from the success of the daughter you overlooked. That's more than we deserve, she said. Yes, I agreed. It is. We haven't spoken since that conversation. Sometimes I see updates about them through mutual acquaintances. My father is still working, approaching retirement age with far less saved than he'd planned. My mother volunteers at a church trying to rebuild her social standing. Melody is engaged to a middle manager at a manufacturing company. A nice enough guy from what I hear who doesn't care about her Instagram following or her failed business ventures. They're fine. They're stable. They're ordinary. And I'm extraordinary. 6 months after the gala, I hosted an event at my penthouse, a charity fundraiser for a scholarship program I'd started, specifically for young women from troubled family backgrounds who showed exceptional academic promise. The guest list was exclusive. Donors, philanthropists, business leaders. The kind of people my parents used to dream about rubbing elbows with. I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city and felt something I'd never felt before. Peace. The desk they'd wanted for Melody, that IKEA piece I'd studied at for years, was long gone. In its place was my custom office, my empire, my success. I'd let them think they'd won when they took that desk. I'd let them think I was still the overlooked daughter, the struggling programmer, the disappointing child. And while they were congratulating themselves on taking my scraps, I'd been building palaces. Ms. Morrison, my assistant Sarah, appeared at my elbow. The guests are starting to arrive. Are you ready? I turned from the window, smoothing down my dress. Another custom piece, this one in midnight blue. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The first scholarship recipient was a young woman named Emma. 20 years old, brilliant in mathematics, from a family that had told her she wasn't worth investing in because her brother was more promising. I'd given her a full ride to MIT, plus a living stipend, plus a guarantee of a job at one of my companies when she graduated. When I handed her the check at the fundraiser, in front of all those important people, she burst into tears. Thank you, she sobbed. You don't know what this means. My family said I'd never amount to anything, that I should just give up and get married. I know exactly what it means, I told her, pulling her into a hug. And they're wrong. You're going to do incredible things. You're going to prove everyone wrong. And someday, you're going to be standing where I am, hosting your own fundraiser, giving some other overlooked girl her chance. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Later that night, after the guests had left and the caterers had cleaned up, I sat in my office, my real office, the one I'd built myself, and pulled up the footage from the desk camera. I'd removed it months ago, but I'd kept the recordings. Sometimes, when I needed a reminder of why I'd done all this, I watched them. Tonight, I watched the moment my family had first sat at that desk, the one they'd taken so easily, assuming I had nothing better. She'll never be anything special, Melody had said, sitting in my chair. She's just ordinary, average, lucky to have the job she has. I smiled and closed the laptop. Not so ordinary after all. A year after the gala, I sold my primary company, not Athena Technologies. I'd already sold that. This was a different venture, a fintech startup that I'd built from the ground up using the connections and capital from my first success. The sale price was $300 million. My personal take was $200 million. Combined with my previous wealth and investments, I was now worth approximately $350 million. I was 31 years old, the age I died in my first life. I celebrated by buying the building where my childhood home was located. Not the house itself, but the apartment building next door that overlooked it. I renovated the penthouse unit and occasionally stayed there just to remind myself how far I'd come. From the balcony, I could see the house where I'd grown up, could see the window of my old bedroom, the one that was too small that I'd been forced to give up for Melody's closet, could see my parents' car in the driveway, ordinary and aging, could see the life I'd left behind. My phone buzzed. An email from my lawyer. Melody had defaulted on her student loans, the ones I owned, and was requesting a payment plan. I approved it immediately with terms that were fair but firm. I wasn't interested in destroying her, just wanted her to understand that actions have consequences. That taking someone's desk might seem like a small thing, but it's representative of a larger pattern. That underestimating someone is the biggest mistake you can make. I replied to my lawyer with the payment terms, then put away my phone and went back to my real work. I had a board meeting in the morning for one of my portfolio companies. I had a lunch with a venture capital firm interested in my next startup. I had a dinner with a philanthropist who wanted to partner on an educational initiative. I had a life, a full, successful, meaningful life. And somewhere across town, my family had my old desk. I hoped they enjoyed it because I'd already furnished my office. Epilogue. 5 years later. I'm 36 now, older than I ever got in my first life. Every day past 33 feels like a gift, a bonus round in a game I'd already lost once. My companies have grown, my portfolio has expanded, my net worth has crossed $500 million. I've been featured in Forbes, in Fortune, in every major business publication. I've spoken at tech conferences, at women's leadership summits, at university commencements. I've built something that will outlast me. A legacy of innovation and empowerment and proving that the overlooked can become the indispensable. My family is fine, stable. My father retired on a modest pension. My mother still volunteers. Melody married her middle manager boyfriend, and they have a baby on the way. She works part-time at a nonprofit now, seems genuinely content with her ordinary life. We don't speak. There's nothing left to say. But sometimes, when I'm in my office, the real one, the one I built with my own hands and my own brilliance, I think about that IKEA desk, about how they'd taken it so easily, so confidently, assuming I had nothing better, about how right they'd been, for all the wrong reasons. I hadn't had anything better. So I built it. Last week, I bought the house I grew up in. Not out of nostalgia or sentimentality. My parents had decided to downsize. And when I heard it was going on the market, I made an offer they couldn't refuse. I'm going to turn it into a home for the scholarship program I founded, a place where brilliant, overlooked young women can live while they pursue their education, where they can study at desks that are actually theirs, in rooms that are spacious and full of light, where they can build their futures without anyone telling them to sacrifice for someone else's dreams. The irony is perfect. This morning, I drove by the house, my house now, and saw the moving truck in the driveway. My parents were supervising the movers, looking tired and older than I remembered. I didn't stop, didn't announce myself, just drove past in my Tesla on my way to another meeting, another deal, another day of being exactly what they never imagined I could be. And you know what the best part is? I'm happy. Not happy because they're suffering. They're not, really. They're just ordinary, living ordinary lives with ordinary regrets. I'm happy because I won. Because I took every doubt they had about me and turned it into fuel. Because I built an empire from their neglect and a fortune from their underestimation. Because I let them give her my desk and I'd already furnished my office. And my office, my life, my success, my empire is magnificent.